Hello, I'm Paul, as always, and welcome to this video. We are going to be talking about sleep, how it's the anchor behind fat loss. It's the anchor behind everything you do, really, because it gives you our biggest anchor point. Coming off the back of our hunger and satiety from last week. If you've not watched that, please go back and watch it. It is delicious. So first things first, we're going to talk about sleep being the ultimate anchor point. All right, I'm a big fan of anchor points because it gives us the opportunity to pop it in and gives us that cue for us to put something else in. So it allows us to habit stack. It allows us to put the habits on top of each other and go from one place to another without really having to think too hard about it. But the reason sleep is so important for us is because that's where we actually grow. So you think about all the hard work that we're doing in the gym. Like, we train 3, 4, 5 times a week, we go to failure a lot, we ache constantly, but that's where we grow. When we sleep, that's where we give our body the opportunity, or the best opportunity for it to grow. It's where we rest, it's where we recoup all of our fatigue and our tiredness. It's where we regulate our hormones, including our stress hormones and cortisol and things like that. And the less sleep you have, the more depressed you're likely to be. All right. And one of the biggest disease factors that comes into it when it comes to anything past obesity, usually it's down to sleep. All right. Then you've got the growth and repair, and then you've got decision making as well. And decision making, even though it's not really like a direct link to fat loss, indirectly I'll show you why it has a huge impact, especially for people who emotionally eat. So, the better sleep we have, the better mood we have, the better sleep quality we have, the more rested you feel, the more fatigue, or the less fatigue you have, the better energy levels you have, the less soreness you will have, and the better you will train. Okay, as well as the better decisions that we make. But where sleep is the opposite. Okay, so we have the negative impact on body composition, so we are more likely to increase our fat stores. All right, we have an impaired anabolic signaling, so we're less likely to gain muscle, or we have a lesser capacity to gain muscle. We have altered dietary habits with a lowercase a, and we impair performance, especially when it comes to high skill and volume. So if we're doing loads of volume work, we impair performance, so we're not able to go as far in terms of fatigue or reps in reverse. And when it comes to high skill stuff, we have poorer decision making. So if you're playing like a team sport like rugby or football, the skill aspect of it goes away, like things like darts and snooker and all these fine motor skills. They usually go down in terms of the skill level. What you'll probably do is you'll probably throw loads of caffeine down your neck and then suddenly realise that you're just making worse decisions and you poorer performance, but just faster. So that's real fun to remember. So what we've got to understand is that this is the worst thing you can do. Okay. When it comes to your sleep, the worst thing you can do is press that snooze button. Right. This is why you should always sleep with your phone in the room. All right. What's meant to happen when we go to sleep is our melatonin is nice and high. So this is about bedtime. So melatonin spikes, so it makes us sleepy. Melatonin is our sleep hormone, or pre-hormone, or whatever you want to call it. All right. And our cortisol is really low, so our stress hormone is really, really low. As you go through your good night's sleep, you hit REM sleep, and then your cortisol come up, and it'll wake you up in the morning. Okay, I'll wake you up here. Melatonin is really low. Yada yada yada. Right? Makes sense. Cortisol wakes you up. Melatonin puts you to sleep. So what happens when you actually snooze? If cortisol doesn't get to spike as high, because cortisol spikes when you wake up. But what you're trying to do when you press the snooze button, you're trying to go back to bed. So melatonin tries to spike again, and cortisol starts to decrease. So we get this decrease in cortisol, which it should be starting to hit the peak about an hour after you wake up, 90 minutes after you wake up. So what you're essentially doing by having the extra 10 minutes, extra half an hour in bed, is you're essentially ruining your chance of having a productive day. You're going to have stinging eyes in the morning, you feel groggy, you're going to just feel slower getting going. All right. And this is the problem, because so many people I know will hit the snooze button because when they wake up like, oh, I need the extra time in bed. If you feel like you need the extra time in bed, that 10 minutes is going to do absolutely fuck all. Right? What you need is you need to sort your bedtime routine out and have a better night's sleep than trying to rely on the 10 minutes of snooze to make you feel better when it's just going to make you feel worse. The secondary impact of that is that we lose sleep as an anchor point. So waking up then becomes different. So if you have a scheduled wake up time at 6 and you press the snooze button and now it's 6:30, you've just lost half an hour of your day. All right, you're now half an hour behind schedule on everything that you're doing, from prepping your food in the morning, taking the dog out, getting the kids ready, going to work. All those things have a knock-on impact, and you'll get to the end of the day and you'll be like, fuck, I've had a shit day. And the reason you haven't had a good day is because you pressed the snooze button. But you don't ever attribute it to that. You're always like, oh yeah, but I've been tired. And it's not because I pressed the snooze button, it's because I didn't get enough sleep. It's like, yeah, that's true, but you didn't get enough sleep because you're not prioritising your sleep. That's why you make the decision, the poorer decisions that we get from lack of sleep, to press the snooze button, which then has a negative impact on everything we do. Okay? One of the biggest issues we then have is we have more time spent awake, all right, because more time spent awake is when we don't sleep very well. So you have more time to eat. You have then worse hunger signals because you don't sleep as well. So you have more want to eat. Then you have a higher fatigue. So you're more likely to eat more and try to get those quick calories that make you feel better. And you have no inclination to train whatsoever. All right, you've also lost your anchor point, so training becomes something that you're probably going to sack off later on in the day. Then you have a poorer decision making. And the poorer decision making, yeah, you can have caffeine and it'll make you feel a little bit late, but your decision makings are just made faster. There's not that make any better. You still make the poor decisions faster. Okay? And that then leads to you falling into eating more. This is where the decision making and decision fatigue. So if you've not heard of decision fatigue, basically it's as you go through the day, the amount of decisions you make sort of piles up. And as you go through the day, the less or the more fatigued your body gets to become towards those decisions. So you're more and more likely throughout the day to make worse and worse decisions. So this is where emotional eating sort of comes in. So personally, I don't think emotional eating is a thing. It's a decision-making fatigue. All right, that's all it is. It's just decision fatigue. And the reason emotional eating isn't a thing is if you took someone who woke up at 11 a.m. every day, you class them as lazy. Right? But if you got told that someone woke up at 5 a.m., you'd be like, they're really driven, motivated, etc. Right? You have no other information, so we have to just preclude that those things are true. If I was going to ask you in that scenario, how would you make the first person, the one that wakes up at 11 a.m., less lazy? You would have them wake up earlier, because that's what you've associated with someone being a little more driven, is waking up early. So you'd find a sweet spot, and they might wake up at 8 o'clock, all right, and they're going to feel less lazy, all right? So now you've established that laziness is an action, okay? So it's a decision. And because we've now established that is an action rather than an emotion, all right, because you've cured someone's laziness by bringing them early, all right, so it's no longer an emotion. They don't feel lazy anymore, they feel more driven, all right, so you've cured that by changing the time they wake up. So your action equals emotion, right? So the action of making them wake up earlier has changed their emotion. So now all you have to realise is that when you overeat and you call it emotional eating, you don't feel the emotion beforehand, you only feel the emotion afterwards. So the act of overeating is almost attributed to emotional eating because you feel shit and guilty and shameful for having overeaten. The action of eating leads to the emotion of shame of emotional eating. Emotional eating doesn't exist. It is a reason that people attribute to overeating. Overeating only exists because you've made poor decisions throughout the day. All right, and this is true. I'll hang my hat on this. I'm not going to take my hat off, but I'll hang my hat on this because nobody on this planet has ever emotionally eaten at breakfast only happens at the last meal of the day. People only emotionally eat in front of the TV with their hand in a tube of Pringles or M&Ms or whatever they fucking use. People only emotionally eat at the end of the day. So it has to be a decision fatigue mechanism. All right? That all comes from sleep. Bam. Right, caffeine. So caffeine has a half-life of 6 hours. All right. All caffeine does is it attaches to the adenosine receptors in the brain. The adenosine receptors in the brain make you feel tired. All right. Sorry, adenosine makes you feel tired. Caffeine blocks adenosine, going into the adenosine receptors, making you feel more alert. Okay, you're just slowing down fatigue. That's all you're doing. So caffeine makes you feel more alert. It's great as a pre-workout. It gives you more oomph. All right. Stupidly heavily researched. However, it has a half-life of 6 hours. So at 2 p.m, you have 200 milligrams. That means at 8 p.m, you're going to have 100 milligrams still in your system. Okay, anything later than that is going to affect your sleep. 100 milligrams is going to affect your sleep, especially if you're not a habitual coffee drinker. Okay, then we have to be very careful about the amount of caffeine we get, because caffeine coming from coffee, as in like a Starbucks normal roast, can range from 60 to 400 milligrams. All right, in a large one. All right, and basically, it is wildly varied on just so many different factors. The first one being how dark the bean is. The darker the bean, the less caffeine, because it's been more roasted, so they've roasted the caffeine out. Okay, so it's something for you to understand and consider. Because when we think about securing sleep as the anchor point, we have to have a routine. All right, we have a routine. We have a warm-up routine before a session. We have the routine for the session. We have a cool-down routine for the session. All right, you cannot turn a corner at 80 miles an hour. Okay, so you cannot just have a full-on day and then just go bang, we're now asleep. So we have to wind down. So typically, I would always say no caffeine at 2. After 2, sorry. All right. First thing you'd do is you'd go for 60 to 90 minutes before. You'd remove all phones, set your alarm, right? Put it in a different room. So I set my alarm in my office, where my bedroom's next door. All right. So every time I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, my alarm. All right. I have to come through here to turn it off, and there's no chance I'm going to snooze because I'm already up. Within an hour. All right, that's when I'd shower, stretch, I'd maybe plan my next day, journal, write things down that's already in my head. I'm like, all right, well, I need to write that down, otherwise in the morning I'm going to forget it. I'd make my room as cool as I can, as dark as I can, blackout curtains, etc. Maybe a fan in the summer. And then you have some personal tidbits and things like that. So I'll always read before bed. I'll always put Alexa onto thunderstorms, so I've got a little bit of white noise. Sarah will throw lavender all over the fucking bed, which has just become a custom. All right, she even puts lavender behind Odin's ears, or pretends to anyway. That's part of our routine now. All right, and then as soon as I put my book down, Odin jumps off bed. So, the easiest way to do it is to pick one of these and start with it. Okay, so phone down at 9, shower, brush your teeth, stretch, white noise and read, cool dark room, lavender sprays, avoid blue light. Okay, so you can get blue light blockers. So when you're struggling to sleep, all right, so you can do all that, all right, then you'd troubleshoot your sleep. So if you're struggling to sleep, so if you're getting less than 7 hours, then this is where I would go, all right, these are the first things we try to change. So we work out our sleep routine. You exercise and get some sun or sunlight in the first hour, or APHOR, if you can't spell. Reduce caffeine after 2, stop eating after 8, avoid nicotine and alcohol because they're both stimulants. Reduce blue light before bed, so you get blue light blockers, or you can just avoid TV, iPads, laptops, etc. Cool dark room, having a wind down strategy, and then reading before bed. If none of those work, then we can cut caffeine down as a whole. All right, we can source some melatonin. Pretty difficult in the UK, but you can still get it. Then we stretch before bed. So stretching before bed allows your body to sit in a better position, so you don't toss and turn as much. And it's a really nice routine to get into. To be fair, you do feel better for it. Then tier 3, so these are the more advanced ones. So these are the ones which are researched a little bit, but not as much as the rest. And what you'll find is that some of these will work better than some tier 1 for you, but it's very personalised. So getting a warm shower before bed. So what a warm shower does, it brings all it vasodilates your blood vessels and brings your temperature down. So when you go to sleep, your temperature will sit at a lower temperature than it does when we're all around, because it doesn't need to be as hot. So when you go into bed and you've vasodilated all your blood vessels from a warm shower or a hot shower, you're already accelerating that process, so you fall off and drift off a little bit easier. Magnesium and potassium both before bed, widely researched to improve sleep, and most people are deficient in magnesium. Then you can cut caffeine out completely, which is a drastic measure, but sometimes it's necessary. Even if you just do that for a short period of time and then get your sleep sorted, and then you can start bringing caffeine in early morning just to help that cortisol spike in the morning. You can get a dog. Know the reason that your life will be happier, so you'll probably smile when you go to bed. You can use lavender, which reduces anxiety, and ashwagandha, which also reduces anxiety. Alright, so lavender spray, oils, candles, etc., and ashwagandha is a supplement. Alright, hope this helps. Go and crack on, try to do some of these. Like, subscribe, let me know if you have any questions. But remember, sleep is your anchor point. It is your biggest anchor point to fat loss.